Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into tonight's tale of the entire history of Hunson Abadeer, I'd love to know where in the world are you watching from tonight? And what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up. Let's begin. When we speak of Hunson Abadeer, we are not just telling the story of a character in Adventure Time. We are opening a doorway into a place beyond into a realm of shadow and contrast, a place where the rules of existence feel both familiar and alien. Hunson is known to most as the Lord of Evil, the ruler of the Nightosphere. Yet even that title leaves much unspoken. Who was he before this? What forces shaped him into such a being? And what does it mean to sit upon the throne of a realm so strange and suffocating? Adventure Time does not hand us a neat origin tale. There is no single episode where Hunson explains who he is or how he came to be. Instead, we catch glimpses. We see him appear through portals in bursts of shadow, in flashes of hunger for a soul. We hear whispers of the contracts he writes, the rules he enforces, and the fear he commands. From these fragments, we begin to piece together a picture, not of a man, but of something older, stranger, almost mythic. The Nightosphere, his dominion, is itself a clue. When Finn and Jake are pulled into it, we see an endless void of twisting landscape. Floating structures drift like lost debris. Monsters scream and claw their way through chaos. It feels less like a kingdom and more like a manifestation of pure disorder. A realm that feeds on suffering and temptation. And yet somehow, within all of this, Hunson reigns. His throne sits at the heart of the Nightosphere, not as a beacon of order, but as the eye of the storm. He is not a builder of civilization, but the one who bends chaos into a shape he can call his own. Some fans have speculated that Hunson is as old as itself, maybe even older, that he is not just a ruler, but a survivor of times long forgotten. The Mushroom War devastated the world, burning away the past and reshaping the land into the weird beauty we know. But beings like Hunson may not have been touched by those flames at all. The Nightosphere seems untouched by human weapons, existing outside the fragile surface world. If Hunson is eternal, then he may predate the fall of humanity, predate the rise of Princess Bubblegum's Candy Kingdom, and even predate the elemental magic that shaped so much of In this way, Hunson feels less like a person and more like a concept. His contract, his rules, his endless hunger, they make him a symbol of evil, bureaucracy, and temptation woven together. Unlike villains such as the Ice King, whose tragedy is deeply human, Hunson seems to embody something cosmic. He is the archetype of a dark father, the embodiment of fear and authority, the one who offers you everything you want with a smile, while quietly binding you to consequences you never saw coming. And yet, for all his grandeur, Adventure Time paints him with humor, with quirks, with flaws. He is petty about small things, careless in the way he treats others, and sometimes oddly mundane. This contrast makes him even stranger. How can the Lord of Evil also be the kind of father who would eat his daughter's fry? How can a cosmic being of shadow squabble over something so small? But perhaps this is the truest insight into his nature. Evil in Adventure Time is not grand and distant. It is tangled, messy, often absurd. Hunson is terrifying, yes, but he is also recognizable. He is part myth, part sitcom dad, and part ancient horror. In imagining his origins, it is tempting to place him among other cosmic entities. Think of Orgolog, the ancient terror cast down from the stars, or Death, who rules the quiet land beyond mortality. These beings are not human, nor even demonic in the way fantasy usually imagines demons. They are archetypes, personifications of rules written to the fabric of the multiverse. Hunson belongs to this same strange pantheon. He is not the god of death, nor of chaos, but of temptation, contract, and the kind of evil that seeps into agreements and bargains. The Nightosphere reflects this, less a kingdom to be ruled, and more a ledger of promises, debts, and soul. One way to think about Hunson's beginnings is to imagine that he did not create the Nightosphere, but was born from it. Perhaps it is a place that requires a face, a ruler, an embodiment. And so Hunson is the mask it wears. His existence, then, would not be an accident of birth, but a necessity of balance. If U must have heroes and kingdoms, then the Nightosphere must have its lord. Hunson is less an individual and more a role filled by a being who steps into it across eternity. This would explain why his rules are so firm, why his contracts are unbreakable. If he is not simply writing them, but carrying out laws written into the bones of reality, then Hunson is not just a schemer. He is an enforcer of cosmic structure. Evil in Adventure Time is bound, not free. Even the Lord of Evil must follow his own rules because they are not his alone. They are the laws of the Nightosphere itself. And yet, there are hints that Hunson enjoys this role. His laughter, his swagger, the delight he takes in devouring souls and scaring mortals. All of it suggests a personality, a will. So while he may be bound by the Nightosphere, he is not only its servant, he is also its performer, turning terror into theater, cruelty into comedy, and fatherhood into a game. Hunson's origins are never spoken aloud in Adventure Time, but the clues are scattered like crumbs across the series. When we see him summon contracts or devour souls, we notice how matter-of-fact he is about it, as though these acts are no more extraordinary than breathing. It feels less like a learned ability and more like a natural state of being. This suggests that Hunson was never a mortal who ascended to power, but a creature born steeped in it, as much a part of the Nightosphere as its shadows and screaming corridors. If we look closely at his design, the details tell us things the story never says directly. His form is humanoid, yet stretched, sharp, and exaggerated. His dark cloak swallows space around him, and his eyes burn with pale green light, giving him the presence of both a father figure and a predator. He looks like something that walked out of a nightmare, but also like someone who could sit down in your living room and talk to you as if nothing were wrong. This blend of the ordinary and the horrific is a recurring theme in Adventure Time's villains, and Hunson embodies it completely. He is not a distant cosmic idea. He is the horror that arrives at your doorstep, smiling as he takes something you love. The Nightosphere itself adds to this sense of origin. When Finn and Jake tumble into it, they find not a structured hell with clear hierarchy, but a place of endless chaos. Shrieking creatures claw at the void. Landscapes stretch in impossible directions, and nothing feels safe or solid. Yet all of it somehow falls under Hunson's rule. He does not rule with armies, nor with laws written on stone tablets. Instead, he rules by nature, his presence itself enough to keep the Nightosphere bending toward him. In many mythologies, the ruler of an underworld is inseparable from the realm itself. Hunson seems to follow that same archetype. The Nightosphere is not just his home, it is his body, his shadow, his reflection. When we consider other beings of similar scale, the comparison becomes even more striking. Orgolorg is an alien horror cast down from the stars, a force that threatened entire world. Death is the gatekeeper of mortality, a skeletal judge who holds the line between life and what lies beyond. Prismo is the dream of a cosmic being, existing as both a wish-granter and a fragile spark of imagination. These figures all exist as embodiments of something larger than themselves. Hunson, too, is an embodiment of temptation, corruption, and the inevitability of bargains made under duress. He is the cosmic reminder that every gift has a price, every deal carries weight, and every shortcut comes with a shadow. Yet the series often treats him with humor, even with clumsiness. When he interacts with Finn and Jake, he is not above making petty jokes or laughing at his own tricks. This is part of Adventure Time's quiet genius. The scariest beings are never stripped of their quirks. By giving Hunson moments of silliness, the show reminds us that evil is not always a towering, perfect machine. It is flawed, ridiculous, sometimes even embarrassing. That, too, makes him feel more real. Speculation about Hunson's beginnings often drifts toward the question of whether he was the first of his kind. The Nightosphere seems vast enough to hold countless horrors, each with their own shape and hunger. Yet none rise to challenge his rule. Perhaps Hunson is not merely a ruler among equals, but the original template from which all Nightosphere creatures flow. If the Nightosphere is an ocean, Hunson may be its tide, pulling everything back into his grasp. His ability to command contracts and enforce rules hints it. He is not just a stronger demon. He is the one who carries authority, the one whose signature binds others in ways they cannot resist. If so, then Hunson is as much a function as he is a character. He is the balance to free will, the cost behind every choice. He is what happens when mortals desire something they cannot earn, or when heroes make mistakes that open doors best left closed. This aligns with how he first enters Finn and Jake's lives. They summon him, not out of necessity, but out of curiosity and misplaced loyalty to Marceline. In doing so, they learn the lesson that evil does not always appear with horns and fire. It can walk into the room because you invited it. Hunson's origin, then, might not just be a story of where he came from, but a story of why he must exist. And yet the mystery deepens when we think about his role as a father. If Hunson is an eternal cosmic archetype, then how does he produce a daughter like Marceline? Marceline's very existence suggests that Hunson is not just an abstract force. He can connect, he can create, he can cross into the human world in ways that leave a mark. This softens the image of Hunson as a faceless concept, and instead hints at him being something more complex, a being caught between his function as the Lord of Evil and his private existence as a father. This contradiction makes his beginnings even more enigmatic. Was he always like this, or did becoming a father change him? Did he begin as pure shadow, only to slowly develop fragments of personality as he brushed against mortal leagues? Or was he always a hybrid of myth and man, both ruler of a dark realm and father of a small child? Adventure Time does not give us the answer, but it does leave us with the haunting possibility that Hunson's origins are not fixed at all. Perhaps he is still becoming, still evolving, shaped by his connections even as he pretends they mean nothing. In this way, Hunson Abadeer is one of the most unsettling figures in Adventure Time's lore. Not because he is the most powerful, but because he is the most ambiguous. He is both eternal and personal, cosmic and petty, terrifying and comedic. His origins may never be fully known, but the fragments we see are enough to remind us that evil in Ooh is not a distant story told by others. It is close, intimate, woven into the bonds of family and the mistakes of friends. And at the center of that shadow, Hunson watches, waiting, smiling faintly as he sharpens the pen for the next contract. When we think of Hunson's role as the Lord of Evil, it becomes clear that his origin is not simply a question of where he came from, but of why he exists at all. In the cosmology of Adventure Time, every great force has its balance. Princess Bubblegum represents creation through candy science, a kingdom made of sweetness and control. Orgalorg embodies destruction from beyond, a predator cast down to sleep beneath ice. The Lich is the embodiment of death and entropy, spreading rot wherever he walks. And then there is Hunson Abadeer, whose dominion is not the end of life, but the corruption of its choices. His Nightosphere is a realm where every temptation leads to suffering, where every deal seals a fate. This suggests that Hunson's beginnings are not tied to a single event, but to a cosmic need. Just as Ooh requires heroes to rise in times of peril, the universe itself may require a figure like Hunson to embody the inevitability of consequence. Without him, choices would carry no weight. Promises would mean nothing. Bargains could be broken without cost. Hunson's presence ensures that temptation is dangerous, that shortcuts are costly, and that evil is not just an idea, but a living force. In It Came from the Nightosphere, we see how this plays out on a small scale. Finn frees Hunson not to unleash destruction, but to help Marceline reconcile with her father. Yet the act of opening the portal alone is enough to summon chaos. Hunson emerges, greedy and unapologetic, devouring the souls of innocents without hesitation. This moment paints him as something inevitable. He does not need to plot or plan. His very existence creates imbalance. The fact that he can step into Ooh and immediately consume lives tells us everything about his origin. He is not a visitor. He is a consequence. But there is also the question of form. Hunson looks humanoid, but he is not human. His cloak, his sharp features, his floating, shifting body all suggest a being who wears the shape of a man, but is not bound by it. Perhaps Hunson's shape is chosen, a mask designed to make him legible to those he encounters. If he walked as a storm of claws and shadows, mortals might not understand him. But if he appears as a tall, smiling figure in a cloak, holding a contract in his hand, then his evil feels familiar, almost approachable. This familiarity is part of his origin, too. He is not meant to be terrifying in the way a monster. He is meant to lure, to invite, to trick. And so he wears a form that allows him to sit across from, to talk in casual tones, to smile just before he takes what you did not mean to give. This leads us to the idea that Hunson may not have been born as a person at all, but as a function that took on the shape of one. Perhaps the Nightosphere itself requires a face, a voice, a negotiator. Without someone to write contracts, its chaos would consume itself. Hunson's origin would not be in the way mortals are born, but in the way storms form. Conditions aligned, and Hunson came into being, stepping forward as the one who could hold the Nightosphere together through rules, bargains, and fear. There is also a fascinating detail in the way Hunson treats his powers. To him, sucking out a soul is as ordinary as eating lunch. He devours without drama, as though this act is neither good nor bad. It is simply what he does. This matter-of-fact quality gives us another glimpse into his beginning. It suggests that Hunson does not see himself as a villain in the way Finn or Jake might define evil. He is a worker fulfilling his role. To him, souls are sustenance, contracts are necessity, and cruelty is simply efficiency. If he was born of the Nightosphere itself, then evil is not a moral choice for him. It is the environment he breathes, the water in which he swims. When comparing Hunson to other dark beings of Adventure Time, his uniqueness becomes clearer. The Lich is pure annihilation, a hunger to erase. Orgolorg is a fallen conqueror, reduced but still yearning for domination. Hunson, however, is not obsessed with destruction or conquest. He is focused on transaction. He does not seek to wipe out life. He seeks to own it, to twist it, to bind it with ink and signature. This makes him feel less like a warlord and more like a cosmic lawyer, an enforcer of deals that no one can escape. His origin, then, might not be found in battlefields or broken worlds, but in the first bargain ever made, the first time someone traded freedom for desire. And then there is the most humanizing part of his story, Marceline. The existence of his daughter complicates everything we think we know about his beginning. If Hunson is merely a function of the Nightosphere, then how does he create life? How does he form a bond with a mortal that results in a child? Marceline proves that Hunson is more than an archetype. He is capable of stepping out of his realm, of connecting with others, of leaving traces in the human world. This means that his origin cannot be entirely divorced from the personal. Somewhere in his eternal function, there is a thread of individuality, a being who made choices, who walked beside immortals, who fathered a child, and left her to grow in a broken world. It is tempting to imagine that Hunson was once something more tender, more complex, before he was fully consumed by the role of Lord of Evil. Perhaps he was once closer to the mortal world, slipping between realms with less distance between himself and humanity. Over time, the demands of the Nightosphere may have hardened him, turning him into the being we know. Or perhaps it is the other way around. Perhaps he was always a creature of temptation and cruelty. And Marceline is the one anomaly in his story, the fragile piece of evidence that even the Lord of Evil can create something good. What makes his origin so compelling is not that it is spelled out for us, but that it remains a shadow. Adventure Time thrives on mystery, on gaps left unspoken. Hunson Abadeer fits this perfectly. He is powerful enough to rule a dimension, yet petty enough to argue over a plate of fries. He is eternal enough to feel archetypal, yet personal enough to shape the childhood of one of his most beloved characters. His origin, then, is not a single answer, but a paradox. He is both more than human and unmistakably human at the same time. As we linger on this paradox, we begin to see why Hunson holds such a strange place in Adventure Time's lore. He is not the central villain, not the apocalyptic threat that the Lich embodies. Instead, he is the shadow in the corner of the room, the reminder that evil is not always about ending. Sometimes it is about compromises, temptations, and neglect. Sometimes it is not about death, but about absence. The father who is there and not there, the ruler who cares and does not care. Hunson's beginnings, whatever they may be, serve as the foundation for this role. He is both myth and man, both contract and chaos, both ruler and parent, and that makes his presence in the story unforgettable. To understand Hunson Abadeer's beginnings more fully, we might step back and look at the way Adventure Time frames its universe. This is a world where magic and science blur together, where cosmic beings drift into the lives of children, and where the post-apocalyptic ruins of humanity quietly shape the background of every story. Within this tapestry, Hunson represents the inevitability of shadow. For every kingdom made of candy or fire or slime, there must also be a place where darkness gathers, a reservoir of all the selfishness and cruelty that mortals cannot contain. That reservoir is the Nightosphere, and Hunson is the face that stares back from its depths. When Finn and Jake descend into that dimension, they are met not with order, but with pandemonium. Horrors with teeth and claws float through the void, landscapes bend in ways that defy reason, and screams echo from no visible source. This is not simply a home for monsters. It is a reflection of excess, of unrestrained appetite, of the chaotic consequences of choice. And yet in the middle of that storm, Hunson sits with casual confidence, as though this madness is nothing more than his living room. This image is as close to an origin story as the show gives us. Hunson as the anchor of chaos, the ruler not by conquest, but by nature. The Nightosphere needs him, and so he is. What makes this even more interesting is the way Hunson does not appear as an unreachable god. He is not too grand to be seen, nor too holy to be touched. Instead, he walks into through portals, chats with his daughter, and laughs at petty jokes. His origin, then, is not that of a distant myth, but of a being woven into the same strange fabric as everything else in Adventure Time. He is both beyond and among, eternal, and yet sitting right across from you at the table. We can also think of Hunson's beginnings through the lens of morality. In many stories, evil is painted as a single, sharp blade, a tyrant, a conqueror, a destroyer. But in Adventure Time, evil is more slippery, more absurd. Hunson embodies this. His evil is not clean or precise. It is messy, bureaucratic, almost playful. He writes contracts, forces signatures, makes deals that cannot be broken. He devours souls, but does so with the ease of snacking. This suggests that Hunson's origins are not in some epic battlefield where good and evil clash, but in the quiet, ordinary moments where temptation wins. In that way, Hunson is less a product of cosmic war and more a reflection of everyday compromise. He is the story of what happens when people say yes to the wrong thing, when promises are broken, when hunger is stronger than restraint. And yet there remains the question of his humanity, or rather, his connection to it. Marceline's existence pulls Hunson out of pure archetype and into something far more complicated. As her father, he cannot be only the Lord of Evil. He is also someone who made choices, who entered the mortal world, who loved, or at least lingered long enough to create a family. This opens a door into his origins that feels deeply personal. Perhaps Hunson was never meant to be a father, and yet he became one. Perhaps his beginnings are not just cosmic, but emotional, shaped by the strange bond he formed with Marceline's mother. We are never told her story, never shown her face, but the very fact that she exists tells us that Hunson's story began not just in the Nightosphere, but in the fragile realm of human connection. This tension defines the mystery of Hunson Abadeer. Is he simply the mask of the Nightosphere, the necessary ruler of chaos and consequence? Or is he something more, a father, a being capable of intimacy and care, even if buried beneath layers of cruelty and neglect? The show does not answer, but perhaps it does not need to. Hunson's origins are not meant to be a history book of facts. They are meant to be a story whispered at night, a reminder that even the darkest figures in our myths are not as distant as we imagine. When we step back and let the pieces settle, Hunson's beginnings become clearer in shape, if not in detail. He is eternal, yet flawed, cosmic, yet personal, archetype, yet father. He is born not of a single moment, but of a balance, a need for evil to have a face and for choices to have a cost. The Nightosphere is his cradle, his crown, and his cage all at once. And Hunson Abadeer, smiling, petty, terrifying, and strangely familiar, sits at its center, reminding us that the story of evil is never clean, never simple, and never entirely without humor. Hunson Abadeer is unlike most villains we meet in Adventure Time, where others rely on brute strength, spells, or sheer destruction. Hunson's power feels subtler and stranger. It is not just about what he can do, but about the framework he enforces, the rules, the contracts, the promises that bind others as firmly as chains. In this way, Hunson is less a fighter and more a system, a living embodiment of laws that seem to stretch beyond his own will. One of his most iconic abilities is the one viewers meet almost immediately, the act of devouring soul. When Hunson enters in It Came from the Nightosphere, he wastes no time in displaying this terrifying gift. With a quick inhale, he pulls the glowing essence from innocent bystanders, leaving their bodies limp and hollow. It is a horrifying, yet Hunson treats it as casually as someone sipping a drink. For him, the soul is food, currency, and control all at once. In myth, demons are often depicted as consumers of life force, but Hunson's matter-of-fact approach makes it uniquely unsettling. This is not the hunger of a beast, but the efficiency of a worker carrying out a daily task. The ease with which he does this tells us something about his nature. If he can consume a soul without resistance, it suggests that his dominion extends beyond the physical. It is not that his victims lack strength, but that the rules of reality bend in his favor. A mortal cannot hold on to the soul in his presence because the laws of the Nightosphere dictate otherwise. Hunson is not stealing in the traditional sense. He is collecting what the universe itself allows him to claim. But Hunson's powers are not limited to devouring. He is also a shapeshifter, able to contort his form in unsettling ways. His mouth stretches wide, his body twists, his cloak ripples like liquid shadow. These transformations serve two purposes. On one hand, they remind us that Hunson is not bound by mortal anatomy. On the other, they show how his power is theatrical. He enjoys putting on a show, reminding others of his dominance not just through force, but through spectacle. In this, we see that Hunson's power is inseparable from performance. He is not content to be feared quietly. He wants to be feared with style. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of his abilities, however, lies in his use of contract. Adventure Time frames Hunson not just as a devourer of souls, but as a writer of deals. When Marceline summons him, she must sign a contract, binding herself to terms she may not fully understand. This small detail opens an entire dimension of interpretation. Why would the Lord of Evil need paperwork? Why would he rely on rules rather than raw strength? The answer may lie in the deeper logic of Adventure Time's universe. Even chaos requires structure. Even evil must obey laws. Hunson's contracts reveal that he is less a wild demon and more a cosmic enforcer, bound to the very rules he imposes. These contracts also paint Hunson as a trickster. He does not force others to agree, he lures them into signing. His victims choose, though often under false pretenses or in moments of desperation. This reflects a particular kind of evil, one that thrives not on destruction, but on consent, twisted into chains. By signing, a character becomes complicit in their own suffering. Hunson does not simply take, he makes others hand themselves over, smiling as they realize too late what they have done. In mythology, such figures are common. From Faustian bargains to crossroads demons, the idea of selling one's soul in exchange for power or freedom is ancient. Hunson carries this tradition into but with Adventure Time's characteristic humor. His contracts are bureaucratic, even silly at times, written with the dry authority of a notary rather than the menace of a devil. This blend of horror and comedy is what makes him so memorable. We laugh at the absurdity, but we also recognize the danger. Hunson's power lies not only in what he can do, but in how he makes evil look ordinary, almost boring, until it is too late. Another layer to his powers is the way portals open for him. Summoned by ritual or signature, he emerges through rips in space that connect to the Nightosphere. These portals remind us that Hunson's reach is not confined to one world. He straddles dimensions, existing both in his chaotic realm and in the fragile lands above. His ability to step between them with ease suggests that he is not limited by barriers that would hold others back. He is a migratory force, flowing where contracts allow, a shadow slipping through cracks in reality. Taken together, these powers give us a picture of Hunson that is deeply different from Oo's other threat. The Lich is annihilation, inevitable and absolute. Orgalorg is domination, an alien hunger for control. Hunson is consequence, a walking contract, a mouth that smiles as it swallows. His powers are not about ending the world, but about binding it, twisting it, reshaping it into a ledger of debts and payment. And yet Hunson is not invincible. For all his terrifying abilities, his power is framed by rule. He cannot consume endlessly without opposition. He cannot break the terms of his own contracts. This vulnerability makes him even more intriguing, for it shows that even the Lord of Evil is bound by a larger structure. He may be the ruler of the Nightosphere, but he is not above its laws. If his origins revealed him as the embodiment of a paradox, his powers reveal him as the servant of a system, one that he enforces with delight but does not wholly control. When we look closer at Hunson's contract, the most unsettling thing about them is how they blur the line between free will and coercion. A person signs of their own choice, yet that choice is guided, even manipulated, by Hunson's charm or by their desperation. He does not need to force a pen into someone's hand. Instead, he makes the signature feel inevitable, almost logical, until the ink dries and the trap closes. This is the essence of his power. Evil disguised as agreement, destruction disguised as a deal. It also raises questions about the larger cosmology of Adventure Time. If Hunson's contracts are binding, who enforces them? Is it Hunson himself through sheer power? Or is there a deeper, unseen law of the universe that gives his bargains weight? The show never tells us, but the consistency with which his rules hold suggests that he is not inventing them out of thin air. Rather, he is acting as an agent of cosmic law, a representative of the Nightosphere's deeper order. In this way, Hunson becomes less a trickster working outside the rules and more a judge working within them. He is the face of a legal system that mortals can barely comprehend. And this makes his relationship to power very different from that of the Lich or Orgalorg. Those beings defy the natural order, pushing against the fabric of existence in their hunger to destroy or to control. Hunson, by contrast, enforces the order of his realm. He is not rebelling against the structure of the multiverse. He is its enforcer, its collector. This is what makes him so terrifying. He is not just strong, he is official. To resist him is to resist the rules themselves. Yet the comedy woven into his character prevents him from becoming a purely abstract force. He is a bureaucrat, yes, but a quirky one, prone to pettiness, distraction, and the kind of humor that makes his evil feel absurdly ordinary. This combination, absolute cosmic authority paired with everyday flaws, creates a dissonance that keeps him unpredictable. One moment he is devouring a soul without hesitation. The next he is bickering with his daughter over fries. In this way, his powers are not only frightening, but oddly intimate. They touch the grandest scales of cosmic law, while also intruding into the smallest moments of family life. His shape-shifting adds another layer to this paradox. Hunson does not use it purely as a weapon, though it can certainly terrify. He uses it theatrically, stretching his body in ways that make him look grotesque one moment and almost comical the next. This theatricality hints at the performative side of evil in Adventure Time. Hunson does not just want to win. He wants to be seen winning. He wants fear, but he also wants recognition. His powers, then, are as much about spectacle as they are about efficiency. Portals, too, play into this performative role. When Hunson enters he does not slip quietly into the world. He erupts through glowing gateways, framed in shadow and fire, his arrival staged as a show. These entrances make his power feel not only undeniable, but also dramatic. He could step into a room silently, but that would not serve his purpose. By appearing with spectacle, he reminds everyone that he is not just a visitor. He is an event. His presence is disruption, and the portal is his curtain rising. There is also the question of why Hunson adheres so strictly to his own rule. If he is the Lord of Evil, why not simply break contracts when it suits him? Why not devour freely without restraint? The answer seems to be that his very existence depends on these boundaries. If the Nightosphere is chaos, then Hunson's function is to channel that chaos into something sustainable. Without rules, the Nightosphere might consume itself. With rules, it has direction, purpose, and a face. Hunson cannot break the contracts, he writes, because to do so would unravel the very fabric that makes him possible. In a strange way, he is as bound by his bargains as those who sign them. This makes Hunson a prisoner of his own power. He enforces rules with glee, but he cannot escape them either. He must collect, must devour, must bargain. His role is not optional. In this, Hunson resembles figures like Death, who also fulfills a duty rather than a desire. Death does not choose who perishes. He simply arrives when the time has come. Similarly, Hunson does not choose to be the Lord of Evil. He embodies it because someone must. His powers are not merely gifts. They are obligations, functions he cannot set aside even if he wanted to. And yet, for all this inevitability, Hunson seems to take pride in what he does. He jokes, he struts, he laughs in ways that make his role feel like a performance he enjoys playing. Perhaps this is his only freedom, to decide how he carries the weight of his duty. If he must be the ruler of the Nightosphere, then he chooses to be flamboyant, theatrical, even humorous. In this way, his powers reveal not only what he can do, but who he chooses to be within the boundaries of his role. He is the Lord of Evil, but he is also Hunson, quirky, flawed, and oddly relatable, even as he terrifies. If Hunson's powers seem strange and contradictory, that is because they are meant to reflect a truth at the heart of Adventure Time. Power is never simple. It is not only about what you can take, but about what you can hold, what you can promise, and what you can make others believe. Hunson's greatest strength is not his ability to consume or to terrify, but his ability to convince. His rules, his paperwork, his insistence on contract, all of these transform raw fear into control. There is a quiet lesson, one that feels almost like a parable told before sleep. The scariest figures in the world are not always those who destroy with fire or sword. They are often those who speak softly, offering gifts or solutions, only to bind you with words you did not fully understand. Hunson embodies this kind of danger. He is the temptation of the easy answer, the shortcut that promises relief but hides a snare. In this way, his powers are deeply symbolic, a reflection of how evil often appears ordinary until the consequences unfold. Adventure Time emphasizes this through small detail. When Hunson interacts with Finn and Jake, he does not simply overwhelm them with brute force. He toys with them, lets them struggle, delights in their confusion. His power is not in ending them outright, but in entangling. This is why his contracts matter so much. They show that Hunson's dominion is not simply over the physical, but over the psychological. He thrives in the space where choices are made, where hesitation creates openings, where the wrong word can lock someone into chains stronger than steel. Even his soul devouring reflects this idea. It is not a violent act in the traditional. There is no blood, no broken bone. The victim simply loses what makes them whole, what makes them themselves. Hunson consumes essence rather than body, leaving behind an empty shell. In this, he is the opposite of the Lich, who annihilates entirely. Hunson does not erase, he hollows. His victims continue to exist, but in a diminished, broken state. This makes his power more insidious, more intimate. It is one thing to be destroyed and another to be emptied. His shape-shifting, too, plays into this insidious quality. By altering his form, Hunson shows that identity itself is malleable, that appearances can be twisted to deceive or to frighten. Sometimes he enlarges his mouth, stretching it into a grotesque void ready to consume. Other times, his body ripples in unnatural ways, suggesting that beneath his humanoid mask lies something far less comprehensible. These changes remind us that Hunson's contracts are never straightforward. Just as his form bends and twists, so too do his words, his bargains, his promises. Nothing about him is ever what it first appears. Portals add another symbolic layer. They are not only gateways from one place to another, they are demonstrations of access. Hunson can cross boundaries that mortals cannot. He can step from the chaos of the Nightosphere into the fragile balance of ooh without difficulty. To those who encounter him, this makes him feel inescapable. He is not confined to one realm. He is the shadow that can slip through any crack, the figure who appears no matter how many walls are built. In bedtime terms, he is the nightmare that does not stay in dreams, but follows you into waking life. Yet it is important to remember that Hunson is not above his own rules. His contracts hold him as tightly as they hold others. If he agrees to terms, he must honor them. This limitation keeps him from being an omnipotent monster. It makes him a figure of structure rather than chaos. And in some ways, that is what gives him his peculiar charm. Hunson cannot simply do whatever he pleases. He must operate within boundaries, bending them to his advantage, but never breaking them outright. This makes him almost relatable, a ruler who lives under the same laws he enforces. This also connects him to other cosmic figures in Adventure Time. Death, for example, does not kill arbitrarily. He follows the laws of life and mortality, appearing only when it is time. Prismo cannot grant wishes outside the structure of his role. His power is immense, but it must follow the rules of dreaming. Even Orgalorg, though destructive, is limited by the curse placed upon it. Hunson fits into the same pattern. His powers are terrifying, but they are not limitless. They are woven into a larger order, one that ensures that even the Lord of Evil has a leash, even if invisible. What separates Hunson from these others is his attitude. Death is resigned, weary, treating his work with solemn inevitability. Prismo is playful but aware of his fragility, careful not to upset the balance that sustains him. Hunson, however, revels in his role. He delights in his rules, enjoys his contracts, and treats his powers like a game. This is why he feels both frightening and absurd. He does not bear his obligations with solemnity. He performs them with joy. The Nightosphere may bind him, but he makes the act of binding into entertainment. This joy, however, should not be mistaken for kindness. Hunson's humor does not soften his cruelty. If anything, it makes it sharper. To him, souls are snacks, contracts are jokes, and suffering is part of the fun. His powers are frightening, not because they are exercised with rage, but because they are exercised with amusement. There is something far more chilling about a villain who harms with a smile, who enforces rules with laughter, who consumes without remorse and then cracks a joke about it. Hunson is that kind of villain, cosmic, comedic, and cruel all at once. At the heart of all these abilities lies a single truth. Hunson Abadeer represents not just evil, but structured evil. He is the law of temptation given form. His soul devouring, his shape-shifting, his portals, and his contracts all revolve around the same principle. The choices matter, that bargains carry weight, and that shortcuts cost more than they promise. His powers are not random. They are thematic, coherent, woven together into a single message. Hunson is the consequence of saying yes when you should have said no. The more we linger on Hunson's abilities, the clearer it becomes that they are not random tricks, but pieces of a larger philosophy. His powers are about boundaries, about who controls them, who enforces them, and who suffers when they are crossed. Every contract he writes is a reminder that nothing comes free. Every soul he consumes is a warning that essence can be taken as easily as breath. Every transformation of his body, every ripple of shadow and wide-mouthed grin, is proof that appearances are unreliable. Hunson's dominion is not simply the Nightosphere. It is the fragile line between choice and consequence. This is why Hunson's interactions with others feel so weighty, even when framed in humor. When Finn bargains with him, when Marceline signs her name, when anyone deals with the Lord of Evil, they are stepping into a web of invisible strings. Hunson's true power lies in how these strings are tied. They are not always seen until it is too late, but once woven, they are nearly impossible to escape. It is a subtle kind of terror, one that creeps in not with fire and destruction, but with paper, ink, and the calm smile of someone who knows he has already won. Adventure Time often plays this dynamic for comedy, but beneath the jokes lies something universal. The idea of a contract with evil is as old as myth itself. From ancient legends of bargains with demons to modern stories of Faustian pacts, humanity has always told itself tales about the danger of promise. Hunson carries this tradition forward, not as a distant legend, but as a character who can stroll through bicker with his daughter, and casually rewrite the fate of anyone who crosses his path. His powers make him feel both timeless and immediate, both archetype and participant. What makes Hunson so fascinating is that his rules are not always cruel in obvious ways. Sometimes they are playful, silly, even absurd. But that playfulness hides a sharp edge. A deal that seems harmless at first can spiral into catastrophe. A soul taken casually cannot be returned. This blending of silliness and severity is at the core of Adventure Time's treatment of evil. It shows us that darkness is not always grand or terrifying. It can be ridiculous, even mundane, and still hold devastating consequences. Hunson's powers embody that paradox perfectly. Even his weaknesses serve this theme. Because he is bound by his own contracts, Hunson is not free in the way one might expect. He cannot simply rewrite the rules to his liking. His strength comes from honoring them, even when they trap him as much as they trap others. This creates a strange kind of fairness. Hunson may trick you into signing, but once the ink is dry, he is as trapped in the agreement as you are. This is what makes him different from purely chaotic figures. He is not the storm itself, but the judge who records how the storm must fall. His evil is structured, and structure always carries both cage and crown. And yet, within those structures, Hunson finds freedom. He chooses how to play his role, how to perform his evil, how to make the act of soul-devouring into something that feels like entertainment. This choice is what makes him unique among Adventure Time's cosmic beings. Death cannot alter his solemn duty. Prismo cannot step beyond the rules of his dreaming. But Hunson, within his contracts, can laugh, can jest, can twist his obligations into performances that amuse him. His powers may be binding, but his personality dances within them. This duality, strict rules paired with flamboyant play, shapes everything about how Hunson appears in the story. He is never the overwhelming apocalypse. He is never the unstoppable warlord. Instead, he is the figure who shows up at the edge of the story, smiling, reminding everyone that consequences are waiting. His powers are not about ending the world, but about reminding the world that nothing comes without cost. So when we think about Hunson's ability, the soul consumption, the shape-shifting, the portals, the contracts, we are not simply cataloging a list of powers. We are seeing a philosophy expressed in action. Evil, in Hunson's form, is not destruction, but transaction. It is not the collapse of everything, but the bending of rules until they serve the one who knows them best. His powers are not terrifying because they are infinite, but because they are inevitable. Once the deal is struck, the outcome is certain, and that certainty is perhaps his most frightening weapon. The Lich can be fought, contained, resisted. Orgalor can be frozen, cursed, diminished. But Hunson cannot be undone so easily. His powers are not about force, but about inevitability. Once you step into his web, you have already lost. The only choice left is how long it will take for the strings to tighten. This is why Hunson Abadeer, more than almost any other being in Adventure Time, embodies the theme of consequence. He does not destroy because that is not his role. He appears instead to remind us that every choice ripples outward, every promise carries weight, and every shortcut is a trap waiting to be sprung. His powers are the embodiment of that truth. When speaking of Hunson Abadeer, it is impossible to separate the Lord of Evil from the role that makes him most human, fatherhood. Marceline the Vampire Queen is not only one of the most beloved characters in Adventure Time, but also the one who reveals Hunson's complexity more than any soul-devouring or contract could. Through Marceline, we see Hunson not as a faceless ruler of the Nightosphere, but as a flawed parent, a presence both tender and neglectful, shaping her life in ways he may never understand. Their relationship is one of the strangest and most poignant in the series. On the surface, it often looks like a clash between opposites: the carefree, emotional, music-loving daughter and the domineering, rule-bound father who seems to care more about deals and souls than about fries or feeling. Yet beneath that surface lies something raw, something deeply human. Hunson is not simply the lord of evil when he interacts with Marceline. He is a father who left, who failed, who sometimes shows love in the clumsiest, most damaging ways. And Marceline, for all her strength and resilience, carries that wound with her always. The most famous example of this comes in a small, almost comedic moment. The story of the fries. Marceline recalls Hunson eating her fries when she was a child, dismissing her feelings as unimportant. To Hunson, it may have been nothing, a petty indulgence, a meaningless act. But to Marceline, it was proof that her father did not value her, that he could take from her without care. The moment is silly on the surface. Who grows up scarred by stolen fries? Yet it is precisely this silliness that makes it so painful. For a child, love and neglect are measured in small things: a toy, a meal, a word spoken or unspoken. Marceline's memory of the fries becomes a symbol of every absence, every moment of dismissal, every time her father's power overshadowed his care. This is the paradox of Hunson Abadeer. He is capable of shaping dimensions, of binding souls with contract, of walking between realms with ease. And yet when it comes to the simple task of fatherhood, he falters. His power means nothing in the face of a daughter's need for love, attention, and stability. In this way, Hunson is almost tragic. He can rule the Nightosphere, but he cannot hold his family together. He can devour soul, but he cannot fill the emptiness his absence leaves in Marceline's heart. Marceline's music often becomes the lens through which we understand this relationship. Songs like Fry Song give voice to her grief and frustration, showing how even centuries later, she cannot escape the wound of her father's neglect. Hunson may laugh at these grievances, brushing them off as childish, but the songs reveal their weight. For Marceline, music is memory, and memory is pain. Each note is a reminder that the Lord of Evil was also the father who did not stay. And yet their relationship is not only pain. There are glimpses of care, even love, hidden beneath Hunson's flaws. In it came from the Nightosphere. Despite his chaos and cruelty, Hunson shows moments of protectiveness toward Marceline. He does not harm her, and even when he clashes with Finn and Jake, his bond with her remains intact. Later appearances hint at his attempts, however awkward, to reconnect. These glimpses suggest that Hunson's role as father is not entirely swallowed by his role as ruler. Somewhere within him, beyond the contracts and the soul-devouring, there is a father who does care, even if he has no idea how to show it. This dynamic mirrors one of Adventure Time's recurring themes, the struggle between archetype and individuality. Hunson, like Death or Orgolor, represents a cosmic function. But unlike them, he is also undeniably personal. Through Marceline, we see him not as a myth, but as a parent, with all the clumsiness, failures, and contradictions that entail. His powers may define him in the Nightosphere, but his failures as a father define him in Marceline's memory. For viewers, this makes Hunson strangely relatable. Few of us will ever bargain with the Lord of Evil, but many understand the feeling of a distant parent, of love mixed with neglect, of wounds carried from childhood into adulthood. Hunson embodies this contradiction in exaggerated, supernatural form, but the emotions are real. They give weight to his character in ways that his powers alone never could. In this light, Marceline becomes Hunson's greatest legacy. Not the Nightosphere, not the contracts, not the endless chaos of his realm. She is the proof that even the Lord of Evil can create something good, something bright, something beloved. But she is also the proof that his neglect carries consequences, that his failures ripple outward in ways even he cannot control. Marceline's strength, her independence, her pain, and her music all flow from the absence of a father who could never quite balance love with duty. We see this dynamic most clearly in Marceline's reactions to Hunson's appearance. Whenever he emerges from the Nightosphere, her tone is never simple. It is never pure hatred, nor pure love. Instead, it is a mix, a tangled knot of exasperation, hurt, and affection that cannot be untied. She scolds him, rolls her eyes at his antics, pushes him away, and yet she never severs the bond completely. Even after centuries of disappointment, she continues to let him into her life. This is not weakness, but the truth of family ties. They linger, they persist, even when they should not. One of the most striking aspects of their relationship is how uneven their priorities are. To Hunson, fatherhood seems like a side role, a secondary responsibility overshadowed by his dominion of the Nightosphere. When he talks to Marceline, it is often with a casual dismissal, as though he cannot comprehend why she is upset. But to Marceline, every interaction carries weight. For her, Hunson is not simply the Lord of Evil. He is her father, and every word he speaks, every gesture he makes, reinforces or erodes that fragile bond. What he sees as trivial becomes monumental to her. What he forgets becomes unforgettable in her heart. This imbalance gives their story its emotional depth. Hunson does not understand the significance of his absence, but Marceline feels it every day. He cannot grasp why she sings about fries, but she remembers the moment as proof of his neglect. Adventure Time presents this imbalance with humor, but underneath, it is heartbreakingly real. Children often measure love in small things, and when those small things are taken lightly, the wound they leave can last a lifetime. Yet Hunson's neglect is not complete. There are subtle ways in which he shows care, though never in the way Marceline truly needs. He spares her from his cruelty, keeping his soul-devouring hunger away from her. He engages with her in conversation, even if awkwardly. In his own way, he tries, though his efforts are often clumsy, selfish, or misplaced. This makes him not a villain in Marceline's life, but something more complicated. A parent who fails, but who still matters, who still holds a place in her heart. This complexity is reinforced by Marceline's own choices. Despite her pain, she does not reject her father outright. She allows Finn to summon him in hopes of reconciliation. She sings about him not only to vent her grief, but also to keep the memory alive. Her actions show that, deep down, she wants him to change, wants him to be present, wants him to see her for who she is. This hope, fragile though it may be, is what keeps their bond alive. Without it, Hunson would be just another villain. With it, he becomes something much more layered. Their story also speaks to one of Adventure Time's central themes, that love is rarely simple and family never clean. The show resists the urge to paint Hunson as entirely monstrous or entirely redeemable. Instead, it allows him to exist in the messy middle. He loves Marceline in his own way, but his love is overshadowed by selfishness and neglect. He fails her repeatedly, but she cannot let go of him entirely. This unresolved tension is what makes their relationship feel so real, so resonant, even in a world of candy kingdoms and cosmic horrors. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of the story is how Marceline transforms her pain into art. Her songs are more than music. They are memories given form, emotions made tangible. Through her music, she processes her father's neglect, turning it into something she can own, something she can share. In this way, Hunson's greatest failure becomes part of Marceline's greatest strength. She takes the absence he left and turns it into melody, creating beauty out of sorrow. In a strange way, this becomes Hunson's unintended gift. He did not nurture her, but his neglect gave rise to the songs that make her who she is. For Hunson, this may be the greatest irony. His powers are vast, his dominion eternal. But the one legacy that truly endures is the daughter who sings about his failures. He may laugh at the songs, dismiss them as childish grievances, but they are the proof that he matters, the proof that his role as a father cannot be erased. Marceline's music keeps his shadow alive, not as the Lord of Evil, but as the father who left her hungry, the father she still hopes will understand. This intertwining of love and pain is what gives Hunson's story its weight. He is not just a villain, not just a cosmic ruler. He is a father who disappoints, a father who lingers in memory, A father whose absence shapes the life of one of Adventure Time's most complex characters. In Marceline's eyes, he is not the Lord of Evil. He is simply Dad, flawed, frustrating, and unforgettable. When Marceline faces her father directly, the exchanges are always tinged with tension. Hunson often arrives confident, almost boastful, as though nothing has ever been amiss between them. He expects his daughter to welcome him, to laugh at his jokes, to overlook his centuries of absence. Marceline, however, greets him with guarded eyes, sharp words, and a heart that has already been wounded too many times. She wants connection, but does not trust it. She wants her father to care, but knows that caring may never come in the way she hopes. This emotional push and pull is not limited to one episode. It surfaces every time their paths cross, reminding us that theirs is not a relationship healed in a single moment, but one that drifts between fragile attempts at reconciliation and renewed disappointment. In It Came from the Nightosphere, Hunson is released into ooh with promises of reconnecting. Yet almost immediately, he indulges in chaos, devouring souls and wreaking havoc. For Finn, this is a lesson in the dangers of meddling with forces beyond comprehension. For Marceline, it is a reminder of why she keeps her father at arm's length. His promises of change are hollow if they are followed only by destruction. And yet Marceline does not sever the bond entirely. There is always a strand of hope, however thin. She tolerates his presence, argues with, even teases him in moments that almost feel playful. This reveals something essential, that Marceline has not given up. She still wants to believe that Hunson can be more than the Lord of Evil. She still wants a father who listens, who stays, who values her beyond contracts and chaos. This desire is what makes their story so poignant. It is not just about disappointment. It is about the fragile hope that disappointment might one day give way to redemption. Hunson's perspective is harder to decipher. On the surface, he treats Marceline with casual dismissal, mocking her grievances, brushing off her pain. But there are hints that beneath this mask lies something more complicated. He never directs his cruelty. He spares her from his soul-devouring hunger. He acknowledges her, even if clumsily, as someone who matters to him. And in moments where she pushes him away, his responses sometimes carry a trace of confusion, as though he does not fully understand why his daughter resents him so deeply. This suggests that Hunson's neglect is not rooted in malice, but in inability. He may simply not know how to be a father. This idea that the Lord of Evil might be powerless in the face of parenthood is deeply fitting for Adventure Time. The show delights in contrast, in revealing the vulnerability within strength and the absurdity within terror. Hunson embodies this perfectly. He can dominate the Nightosphere, bind souls with contracts, and terrify mortals with a glance. Yet when it comes to Marceline, he is awkward, clumsy, and incapable of giving her what she truly needs. His greatest weakness is not a hero's sword or a magical curse. It is his own daughter's disappointment. Marceline's music becomes a stage where this dynamic plays out most clearly. In Fry's song, she sings not only about stolen fries, but about the broader absence that defines her relationship with her father. The song is simple, almost childlike, but that is its power. It captures the way a child remembers neglect, not through grand betrayals, but through small, seemingly trivial moments that carve deep wounds. Hunson may laugh at the song, but for Marceline it is truth. It is the language she uses to process her pain, to transform memory into melody. Later songs, too, carry echoes of her father. Even when Hunson is not present, Marceline's music is shaped by the absence he left behind. Loneliness, longing, bitterness, and hope all swirl through her lyric. Each song becomes a conversation with someone who is not there, a way of reaching for a father she cannot fully grasp. In this way, Hunson's role in her life extends far beyond his rare appearance on screen. He is a ghost haunting her melody, a shadow that lingers in every note. For Hunson, this legacy is bittersweet. His neglect gave Marceline pain, but that pain gave her voice. Her songs are among the most memorable elements of Adventure Time, beloved by fans for their honesty and emotion. Without Hunson's failures, those songs might never have existed. This does not excuse his neglect, but it reframes it. He is both the wound and the muse, the absence and the inspiration. In the end, Marceline's art is what redeems the pain, transforming it into something beautiful, something eternal. Adventure Time never fully resolves their story, and that too feels intentional. To give Hunson a clean redemption would flatten the complexity of their bond. Instead, the show allows ambiguity to remain. Hunson is neither condemned forever nor absolved completely. He lingers in the middle, just as many parents in real life do, imperfect, flawed, loved, and resented at the same time. This ambiguity is what gives their relationship depth. It acknowledges that family is not always healed, but it can still endure. Through Marceline, we see Hunson not as the Lord of Evil, but as a father who fell short. And through Hunson, we see Marceline not only as the Vampire Queen, but as a daughter carrying both strength and sorrow. Their story is not one of simple villainy or simple forgiveness. It is a story of love, complicated by absence, of connection strained by neglect, of music born from wounds that never fully close. Hunson and Marceline's story resonates so deeply because it mirrors the quiet ache of family bonds that are never what we wish them to be. Even wrapped in the fantastical colors of Adventure Time, their relationship carries a weight that feels real. The absence of care, the longing for recognition, the hope that never fully fades. These are themes as old as childhood itself. And in Hunson's case, the pain is magnified by the sheer absurdity of who he is. To Marceline, the disappointment is not just that her father was inattentive. It is that her father was the Lord of Evil, too consumed by contracts, chaos to see her hunger for affection. This irony is played for humor at times, but underneath lies a truth that lingers like a shadow. Parents, no matter how flawed, leave indelible marks. Marceline grew into strength, resilience, and independence, but that strength is interwoven with wounds that never fully heal. Her centuries of wandering, her songs of loneliness, her sharp wit, all of these carried traces of the father who was there and not there, who loomed as both presence and absence. Hunson's failures do not erase the bond, however. They make it complicated, thorny, enduring. Marceline still calls him Dad. She still allows him back into her life even when he disappoints her. This speaks to the persistence of family ties, the strange gravity that holds children and parents together even when everything else says they should drift apart. Adventure Time does not shy away from this reality. It allows the bond to remain messy, unresolved, and alive. There are moments, rare but meaningful, when Hunson does show that he cares. In later appearances, he attempts, awkwardly, imperfectly, to connect with Marceline. His gestures may be clumsy, but they hint that beneath the facade of the Lord of Evil lies a father who at least recognizes his daughter's worth. He may never be the parent she needs, but he is not blind to who she has become. This sliver of recognition softens the shadow, suggesting that even the Lord of Evil is not immune to love. For Marceline, these glimpses are both comforting and frustrating. They remind her that her father is capable of affection, but they also highlight how rarely he offers. This duality fuels her songs, her moods, her lingering resentment. It ensures that her story is not one of clean resolution, but of ongoing negotiation, a balance between hurt and hope, absence and presence. This dynamic reflects Adventure Time's broader vision of family. Throughout the series, we see bonds that are unconventional, fractured, and yet enduring. Finn finds father figures in Jake and Princess Bubblegum, and even in the cosmic entities he meets. Jake himself struggles with fatherhood, learning how to care for his pups while still chasing adventure. Princess Bubblegum creates her own family through the Candy Kingdom, filling her loneliness with subjects who both love and fear her. In each case, family is never simple, never perfect. Hunson and Marceline fit into this tapestry, showing that even in a world of magic and chaos, the most difficult stories are often the ones closest to home. What makes Hunson's role especially powerful is how it reframes Marceline's character. Without him, she might simply be the playful, mischievous vampire queen, defined by her powers and her music. With him, she becomes something richer, a daughter carrying a legacy of absence, a child who grew into independence because she had to. Her strength is born from his failure. Her music is born from his silence. Her complexity is born from the contradiction of loving and resenting him all at once. And for Hunson, Marceline is perhaps the one thread that connects him to something beyond the Nightosphere. In her, he has proof that he can create, that he can connect, that he can leave behind more than contracts and chaos. She is his greatest consequence, his most enduring legacy, and the one thing he cannot devour or bind. Marceline exists beyond his rules, beyond his bargain. She carries his shadow, but she transforms it into melody, into friendship, into love. This is why Hunson's story as a father is as important as his role as the Lord of Evil. Without Marceline, he is a cosmic archetype, a function of temptation and consequence. With her, he is humanized, flawed, and deeply relatable. He becomes more than a villain. He becomes a father who disappointed, who failed, but who still lingers in the heart of his daughter. His history is written not only in contracts and souls, but in songs sung under the stars, in fries remembered with pain, in the bond that refuses to break. When Hunson Abadeer steps into the lives of Finn and Jake, the story takes on a new rhythm. Until then, the Lord of Evil had existed mostly as a shadow in Marceline's past, a name spoken with annoyance or sorrow. But through Finn and Jake, we see him clash directly with the bright, adventurous heart of Ooh. The encounters that follow are not just battles between heroes and a villain. They are lessons, parables about trust, about consequence, and about what happens when forces of light and shadow collide. Their first major meeting comes in It Came from the Nightosphere, an episode that perfectly captures the tension between innocence and danger. Finn, wanting to help his friend Marceline mend her relationship with her father, performs a ritual to release Hunson from the Nightosphere. His intentions are good. He believes, as many children do, that broken families can be healed if only the right words are spoken, if only the right doors are opened. But in his eagerness, he underestimates the cost of meddling with forces far older and darker than himself. When Hunson emerges, the contrast is immediate. Finn is pure energy, youthful optimism, wrapped in a green backpack and a golden sword. Hunson is towering, cloaked, his eyes burning with pale fire. Their meeting is not simply a clash of power, but of worlds. Finn represents the fragile, hopeful surface of Ooh. Hunson represents the depth, the shadows that linger just beyond reach. By summoning him, Finn unwittingly invites imbalance into his world. At first, Finn tries to act as mediator, urging Marceline and Hunson to reconcile. But the moment Hunson sets foot in Ooh, his nature asserts itself. He devours souls without hesitation, treating the act as ordinary, almost casual. For Finn, this is a shock. To him, evil has always been something to fight, to confront in dungeons or battlefields. But Hunson is different. He is not fighting, he is consuming. His evil is not dramatic, it is matter-of-fact. This forces Finn to confront a truth he has never fully grasped before, that some beings are dangerous not because they choose to be, but because they simply are. Jake, too, feels the weight of Hunson's presence, though in his own way. Jake often balances Finn's optimism with caution, sometimes even with laziness. When faced with Hunson, Jake's usual humor turns into nervousness. He cracks jokes, makes light of the situation, but beneath his words lies fear. He recognizes that Hunson is not like the monsters they fight in dungeons. This is not an enemy they can simply punch until he goes away. This is something deeper, older, bound by rules they do not understand. The chaos that follows Hunson's release paints the city in shades of nightmare. Citizens lose their souls, collapsing into lifeless shells. Marceline struggles with her father's selfishness. Finn scrambles to undo the mistake he has made. Through it all, Hunson moves with a kind of amused detachment, as though everything unfolding is a game. He is not malicious in the way the Lich is. He is not seeking conquest like Orgalor. He is simply doing what he does, following the role that defines him. This casual cruelty is what unsettles Finn and Jake most. It is one thing to fight evil that knows it is evil. It is another to fight evil that does not even see itself as wrong. Finn, ever the hero, steps forward to stop Hunson, trying to contain the chaos. But his attempts reveal the imbalance between them. Hunson is not a foe who can be beaten with simple force. His rules, his contracts, his dominion over souls place him beyond the reach of swords. For Finn, this is a humbling moment. It teaches him that not every battle can be won by courage alone, that some struggles require wisdom, restraint, and understanding of forces far greater than himself. This first encounter sets the tone for all that follows. Whenever Hunson crosses paths with Finn and Jake again, the dynamic is the same. They bring light, energy, and determination. He brings shadow, inevitability, and rules that bend reality itself. Their meetings become less about who will win and more about what lesson will linger. And for Hunson, these encounters are amusing diversion. He sees Finn not as a threat, but as a child fumbling in matters beyond his grasp. He toys with him, mocks him, tests him. In this, Hunson reveals something essential about his character. He does not need to destroy Finn or Jake to prove his power. Simply by existing in their world, he unsettles them, forcing them to confront truths they would rather ignore. Hunson's power lies not in crushing his enemies, but in reminding them of limits. The most striking thing about Hunson's presence in Oo is how quickly he changes the rhythm of the world around him. Finn and Jake are used to villains who fit a certain mold, foes that can be fought, frightened, or outsmarted. Even when the threat is great, it usually follows rules they understand. But Hunson warps that rhythm. His arrival is like a note struck off key, unsettling precisely because it cannot be resolved in the usual way. When Finn confronts him, we see the hero's natural instincts collide with cosmic absurdity. Finn lunges forward with courage, determined to stop the soul-devouring chaos spreading through the city. But Hunson does not respond like a typical adversary. He does not draw a weapon or strike back in anger. Instead, he treats Finn's bravery as little more than a distraction. The contrast is almost comical. Where Finn's passion burns hot, Hunson's demeanor remains cool, almost bored, as though he has seen countless heroes try and fail before. For Finn, this indifference is worse than hostility. It shows him that his courage, no matter how pure, is not enough to command the attention of someone like Hunson. Jake, meanwhile, becomes the voice of caution. His shape-shifting body may give him power, but his instincts are rooted in survival. He warns Finn, pulls him back, reminds him that this is no ordinary fight. Yet Jake, too, cannot escape Hunson's unsettling effect. His humor falters, his jokes fall flat, and even his stretchy powers seem insignificant against someone who does not play by the rules of physical combat. Hunson does not strike Jake down, but he makes Jake's confidence shrink. That in itself is a kind of victory. The deeper lesson in this encounter is about responsibility. Finn wanted to help Marceline by bridging the gap between father and daughter, but in doing so, he unleashed a force that could not easily be contained. The show frames this as a cautionary tale. Good intentions are not enough. Sometimes meddling in relationships that are not yours to mend can bring unintended harm. Hunson's rampage through Oo is less about his hunger and more about the ripple effect of choices made without understanding the weight they carry. For Finn, it is a painful but necessary step in his growth as a hero. Hunson's behavior also reveals something about his view of Finn and Jake. He does not see them as enemies to be defeated. Instead, he treats them as inconveniences, flies buzzing around his feast. When he mocks Finn's efforts or swats Jake aside, it is not with rage, but with amusement. This casual dismissal makes him all the more terrifying. To be hated by a villain at least acknowledges your significance. To be ignored, to be laughed at, is to be reminded of your smallness. Hunson forces Finn and Jake to feel that smallness, not out of cruelty, but out of sheer disinterest. And yet, there are moments when Hunson does pay attention. When Finn speaks of Marceline, when he stands between her and her father, Hunson's amusement shifts into something sharper. In those moments, he acknowledges Finn not as a hero, but as an obstacle to his relationship with his daughter. This reveals the one area where Hunson truly feels invested. He may not care about the people of Oo, but he does care, clumsily, selfishly, about Marceline. Finn's loyalty to her touches a nerve, pulling Hunson out of his casual detachment and into genuine engagement. The clash that follows is not just physical, it is symbolic. Finn becomes a stand-in for every child who protects a friend from a parent's neglect, for every person who dares to say that love is more than power. Hunson, meanwhile, becomes the shadow of authority that looms over family bonds, reminding us that even the brightest hearts can be weighed down by the failures of those meant to care for them. Their conflict is not about victory or defeat, but about meaning. It is a story told in the language of bedtime myths, where heroes stand against shadows not to win, but to remind themselves of what light feels like. Through it all, Hunson never changes who he is. He does not evolve, does not grow softer in the presence of Finn and Jake. He remains the Lord of Evil, devouring souls and mocking heroes. And yet by facing him, Finn and Jake change. They learn humility, responsibility, and the limits of their own strength. Hunson then becomes less a villain to be vanquished, and more a teacher by accident, a shadow that shapes the heroes who dare to confront it. Hunson's presence in Finn and Jake's story does not end with that first chaotic release. Though his appearances are rare, each time he returns, the pattern remains the same. Finn and Jake must wrestle, not only with Hunson's overwhelming powers, but with the moral weight of what his presence means. These encounters never feel like traditional battle. They are always lessons, strange, messy parable about trust, consequence, and the limits of heroism. One of the later moments that captures this tension comes when Hunson is once again pulled into ooh. By this point, Finn has grown older, more experienced, more thoughtful. Yet even then, Hunson unsettles him. The Lord of Evil is not a foe who can be measured against swords or spells. He is a reminder that some dangers exist beyond the reach of courage. Finn can swing his blade at Hunson's cloak, but what does that do against the father's absence, or a contract written in ink that binds reality itself? Hunson is not just a fight, he is a symbol, and Finn must face what symbols cannot always be defeated. Jake, too, continues to feel the strangeness of Hunson's presence. His instinct is always to defuse with humor, to stretch into shapes that make danger look silly. But Hunson resists. When Jake jokes, Hunson simply looks past him, his laughter directed inward, not outward. For Jake, this is frustrating. He is used to villains being thrown off balance by his antics, yet Hunson remains immovable. The Lord of Evil cannot be unsettled by gags because his world is already absurd. In the Nightosphere, chaos and humor are intertwined, and Hunson has mastered both. Against him, Jake's wit feels small. In this way, Hunson's encounters highlight the boundaries of both heroes' strength. Finn's courage and Jake's humor, so often enough to save ooh, falter against someone who cannot be fought on their terms. The lesson is clear. Some forces cannot be defeated. They can only be endured, resisted, or understood. For young heroes, this is a sobering truth. Yet there is one area where Finn does succeed, though not in the way he expects. When he defends Marceline against her father, when he refuses to let Hunson define her, he accomplishes something no sword strike ever could. He protects the bond of friendship. In standing up for Marceline, Finn draws a boundary that Hunson cannot cross. The Lord of Evil may take souls, may write contracts, may tower above them with cosmic authority, but he cannot erase the love Marceline shares with her friends. This becomes the true battlefield, the ground on which Hunson finds resistance. Hunson's reaction to this resistance is telling. He does not destroy Finn for his defiance. Instead, he acknowledges, however reluctantly, as someone with enough conviction to stand against it. It is a fleeting acknowledgement, but it matters. For Finn, it is proof that even in the face of overwhelming power, a hero's heart can still make a difference. For Hunson, it is a reminder that his daughter's world contains bonds that his contracts cannot bind. This dynamic continues each time Hunson reappears. His presence forces Finn and Jake to question what heroism means when victory is impossible. It shows them that being a hero is not always about winning, but about standing, about refusing to let darkness swallow the bonds that matter most. Hunson never changes who he is, but by confronting him, Finn and Jake change who they are. They learn that sometimes light is not about defeating shadow, but about refusing to let it define the story. What makes these encounters so powerful is how how they blend humor with gravity. Hunson is often portrayed with absurd quirks, his evil framed in bureaucratic contracts and comedic detachment. Yet beneath that humor lies genuine menace. This balance mirrors the way children often experience authority. A parent can be funny one moment, frightening the next. Rules can seem silly until their consequences become painfully real. Through Hunson, Adventure Time captures this duality. He is both ridiculous and terrifying, both laughable and unforgettable. For Finn and Jake, facing Hunson becomes a kind of rite of passage. It teaches them that not all problems can be solved with swords, fists, or stretchy limbs. Some problems, like fractured families, unyielding rules, or the consequences of choices, must be faced differently. They must be endured, navigated, sometimes even accepted. Hunson embodies these truths. He is not the villain who ends the world, but the one who reminds us that some shadows are too deeply woven into the fabric of life to ever fully vanish. Hunson's encounters with Finn and Jake linger in memory not because of flashy victory or grand conclusion, but because of how unresolved they remain. Unlike many villains in Ahu, he is not sealed away forever, nor is he reformed into an ally. He exists at the edges of their story, appearing and vanishing like a shadow, each time leaving behind lessons heavier than the damage he causes. In this way, he becomes less of an enemy and more of a present, a reminder that not every danger can be defeated, not every wound can be healed, and not every father can be changed. For Finn, the legacy of these meetings is maturity. Each clash with Hunson teaches him that being a hero is not about forcing happy ending, but about standing by friends even when the shadows refuse to lift. He cannot fix Marceline's family, but he can support her through it. He cannot rewrite Hunson's contract, but he can refuse to let them define what friendship means. These lessons are quiet, but profound. They shape Finn into the kind of hero who understands that courage is not only about swinging a sword, but about sitting beside someone in their sorrow, protecting them when they cannot protect themselves. Jake's lesson is different, but no less important. His humor and laid-back spirit usually protect him from the heaviness of the world. But in Hunson's presence, that shield falters. He learns that some problems cannot be joked away. Some figures cannot be unsettled by laughter. Yet instead of breaking him, this realization deepens his respect for the forces at play in U. Jake may never match Hunson in power, but he grows to understand that protecting others sometimes means accepting the limits of one's own ability. For Jake, this humility is as much a strength as his stretching powers. Hunson himself does not change through these encounters. He remains who he is, the Lord of Evil, the ruler of the Nightosphere, a father bound by flaws he does not care to mend. And yet by colliding with Finn and Jake, he helps the heroes change. He becomes an unwilling teacher, not through lessons offered, but through shadows cast. The boys see in him what cannot be beaten, and in that reflection, they learn what must be endured. There is a bedtime quality to this pattern. Hunson is like the figure in an old tale. The creature children are warned about, not to fight, but to avoid, not to defeat, but to respect. He is the reminder that shadows exist, that they will not vanish no matter how bright the torch. But he is also the reminder that light does not need to erase shadow to shine. Finn and Jake emerge from each encounter humble, wiser, and still hopeful. Hunson may laugh at their smallness, but their smallness carries meaning he cannot devour. The symbolism becomes clearer when we look at Hunson's role beside other cosmic forces in the series. The Lich is annihilation, terrifying but finite, something that can be confronted and contained. Orgalorg is conquest, hungry, alien, but still vulnerable to downfall. Hunson is different. He is consequent. He cannot be destroyed because he is not only a being, he is a principle. His presence reminds Finn and Jake that choices ripple outward, that bargains echo long after they are struck. To fight him is to fight inevitability itself, and so the only path left is endurance, understanding, and the courage to keep moving. These lessons echo far beyond the moments on screen. They seep into Marceline's songs, into Finn's maturing worldview, into Jake's tempered humor. Hunson's encounters shape not only their adventures, but the tone of Adventure Time as a whole. The show is not afraid to leave shadows unresolved, not afraid to let heroes face what they cannot conquer. Hunson embodies this philosophy. He is a villain who remains a villain, yet whose role enriches the heroes simply by existing. As sleepyheads are listening tonight, you may feel the hush of this truth. Not every story ends with victory. Some stories end with lessons carried forward, quiet reminders tucked away in the heart. Hunson's meetings with Finn and Jake are exactly that. Stories without resolution, but filled with meaning. They remind us that heroes grow not only through triumph, but also through humility, through facing what they cannot change. And so we close this chapter with Hunson fading once more into the shadows of the Nightosphere, his laughter lingering like an echo. Finn and Jake stand together, changed not by triumph, but by survival, carrying new understanding into their future journeys. Hunson remains untouched, unchanged, eternal. But the world around him shifts. Heroes grow older, bonds grow stronger, and the lessons of consequence continue to ripple outward, soft as waves against the shore. In the next part of our tale, we step away from the personal encounters and drift into the larger mysteries of Hunson's dominion. Beyond the father, beyond the villain, lies the realm he ruled, the Nightosphere itself. In the following chapter, we will wander its chaotic halls, exploring the politics, the cosmic connection, and the strange balance that keeps Hunson at its center. The Nightosphere is unlike any other place in Adventure Time, where the Candy Kingdom glows with sweetness and order, where the Fire Kingdom burns with passion and temper. The Nightosphere twists into something far stranger. It is a realm of endless voids, of floating structures that look both ancient and collapsing, of monsters that scream without rest. It feels less like a kingdom and more like a fever dream given shape. And at the center of this chaos, Hunson Abadeer rule. But the word rule is slippery. Hunson does not sit upon a throne surrounded by advisors and armies. His dominion is not the kind of rule we see in Bubblegum's laboratory or Flame Princess's volcanic court. Instead, it feels more like embodiment. The Nightosphere is his shadow, and he is its face. The monsters who roam its halls do not follow him out of loyalty. They exist within his gravity, pulled into orbit, around the inevitability of his power. To understand Hunson is to understand that his politics are not about governance, but about presence. He does not command order. He defines it. Still, the Nightosphere is not entirely without structure. There are rules, strange and binding, rules that echo through contracts and bargains. When Finn and Jake stumble into this dimension, they find themselves entangled in procedures, in forms and approvals, in lines that stretch forever. It is absurd, but it is also revealing. Even chaos has a skeleton, and in the Nightosphere, that skeleton takes the shape of bureaucracy. Hunson may look like a towering demon, but in practice he is also a cosmic bureaucrat, stamping papers and enforcing contracts in ways that are as comedic as they are terrifying. This bureaucratic side of the Nightosphere gives it a strange familiarity. We recognize it because it mirrors the structures of our own world. Lines at government offices, forms to be filled out, signatures demanded before anything can be done. Yet in Hunson's realm, the stakes are higher. Instead of a driver's license or a permit, the contracts bind soul. Instead of waiting to renew paperwork, the waiting stretches into eternity. The humor of it is sharp, but the symbolism is sharper still. The Nightosphere shows us that evil is not always a chaotic monster. Sometimes it is a desk, a stamp, a line that never moves. This balance between chaos and order is what makes Hunson's politics so compelling. He does not need armies because his realm itself enforces his will. He does not need loyal subjects because his rules bind them regardless of loyalty. He is less a king and more a living law. And yet within this law, he allows absurdity, noise, and chaos to thrive. The Nightosphere is not neat, not clean. It is full of screaming monsters and twisted landscapes. But all of that chaos bends toward Hunson, as if his presence gives shape to the formless. When we compare this to other rulers in Adventure Time, the differences are stark. Princess Bubblegum rules through control, her intelligence and technology creating a carefully maintained kingdom. The Flame King rules through intimidation, his his fiery presence keeping his subjects in line. But Hunson's rule is stranger. He does not watch over his subjects day by day. He does not need to. His authority is absolute, not because of what he does, but because of what he is. The Nightosphere itself bends around him. His politics are not chosen, they are inherent. This brings us to his connections with other cosmic figures. In Adventure Time's universe, the Nightosphere is not the only strange domain. There is the land of the dead, ruled by death. There is Prismo's time room, suspended in dreamlike stasis. There is the Citadel, a prison for cosmic criminal. Each of these realms has its own ruler, its own function in the balance of the multiverse. Hunson fits into this pattern, standing alongside them as one of the figures who embody cosmic order or personal presence. Yet Hunson's realm feels different. Where death carries solemn inevitability, Hunson carries absurdity. Where Prismo offers wishes with gentle caution, Hunson offers contracts with mischievous delight. He is not just another ruler in the cosmic hierarchy. He is the trickster, the one who makes the rules feel laughable even as they bind tighter. This gives him a unique place among the great beings of Ooh. He is not the most powerful, but he is perhaps the most unsettling, because he shows how even cosmic law can wear a smile. The Nightosphere is, above all, a place of contradictions. It is loud with endless screams, yet eerily quiet in the spaces between. It feels infinite, but it is also claustrophobic, as though every corridor bends back into its. When Finn and Jake wander through it, the experience is less like exploring a kingdom, and more like stumbling through a labyrinth that was never designed to make sense. This is the environment Hunson embodies, a space where chaos is given rules, and rules are wrapped in chaos. Even the creatures of the Nightosphere reflect this contradiction. They are monstrous, with claws and teeth, yet many of them follow bizarre, almost bureaucratic procedures. Some wait in lines, others shuffle about in endless loops, all of them caught in a rhythm that feels both absurd and unavoidable. Hunson does not need to bark orders. They move because the system itself demands it. Because in the Nightosphere, the rules are written into the air they breathe. In this way, Hunson's power is subtle but absolute. He does not govern through fear alone. He governs through inevitability. This inevitability is part of why Hunson feels so distinct from other rulers. Death, for instance, is finality made flesh. When he appears, there is no humor, no negotiation. He simply is, and his presence closes doors forever. Prismo, by contrast, is a dreamer, a cosmic wish-granter whose kindness masks the fragility of his existence. Orgolorg is hunger, endless and alien, seeking only to dominate and consume. Hunson, however, sits at an intersection. He carries inevitability like death, but filters it through contracts and signatures. He carries hunger like Orgolorg, but directs it toward souls rather than worlds. He carries playfulness like Prismo, but twists it into trickery. In this way, Hunson is not just another cosmic figure. He is a hybrid of traits, a parody of authority, a mirror of how rules can be both absurd and binding. The Nightosphere also raises questions about where Hunson fits in the hierarchy of these realms. Is he equal to death? Is he above or below Prismo? The show never gives us a clear answer, but the ambiguity itself is telling. Hunson's politics do not seem to extend beyond his own domain. He does not seek conquest or expansion. He does not meddle in the affairs of Ooh unless summoned. Instead, he remains rooted in his own realm, confident that the chaos of the Nightosphere will never diminish as long as there are choices to corrupt and bargains to be made. And yet, his interactions with Finn, Jake, and Marceline show that his influence does seep outward. When he crosses into Ooh, the rules of his realm come with him. Souls can be devoured, contracts can be enforced, chaos can spill across the land. In this sense, Hunson is like a leak in the multiverse, a reminder that the boundaries between realms are never airtight. His politics, then, are not about expanding power, but about maintaining presence. He does not need to conquer Ooh, he only needs to exist, and his existence ensures that the Nightosphere touches everything, even in small ways. The humor of this cannot be overlooked. Adventure Time often plays Hunson's politics for laughs, showing how the Lord of Evil operates not through war councils or armies, but through forms and procedure. It is bureaucracy exaggerated to the point of absurdity, yet still frightening because of its consequences. This framing makes Hunson feel familiar in a way other cosmic beings do not. We recognize the frustration of waiting in line, of filling out endless paperwork, of being trapped in systems that do not care. The Nightosphere turns this frustration into horror, showing how bureaucracy can become eternal, how rules can consume not just time but souls. This blend of comedy and horror makes Hunson's realm symbolic as much as literal. The Nightosphere is not just a place where monsters dwell. It is the embodiment of systems that feel endless, of rules that trap more than they protect, of authority that laughs while binding you tighter. Hunson is the politician, the lawyer, the bureaucrat, and the father all rolled into one. His politics are not about leading with vision. They are about maintaining a structure that no one can escape. In this light, Hunson's connections to other rulers become even more intriguing. Where bubblegum builds order out of science, Hunson builds order out of contracts. Where the Flame King rules through fire and fear, Hunson rules through inevitability. Where death waits for the end, Hunson ensures that the in-between is filled with temptation and consequence. Each ruler represents a different face of authority, but Hunson's is the one that feels most unsettling, because it is the one we recognize most easily in our own world. When we look at Hunson's place in the broader universe, it is helpful to think of him as part of a constellation. Each cosmic being in Adventure Time represents not just power, but a principle. Death is the line that separates what is alive from what is gone. Prismo is the dream that offers possibility, yet warns of fragility. Orgalord is the hunger that devours worlds, too immense to ever be satisfied. The Lich is entropy, the urge for everything to wither away. And Hunson Abadeer, he is the shadow of consequence, the architect of temptation, the rule-maker whose smile hides the weight of inevitability. This constellation of beings is not random. Together, they form the architecture of Adventure Time's cosmology. They remind us that Ooh is not only candy people and magical swords, but also a universe governed by strange and ancient laws. Hunson stands among these figures not as the strongest, nor as the most terrifying, but as the one who makes us laugh even as we shiver. His politics, if we can call them that, exist in that strange balance, cosmic weight wrapped in absurd comedy. The Nightosphere itself reflects this duality. On one level, it is terrifying. A void filled with screaming monsters, landscapes that bend and twist, a chaos that never ends. But on another level, it is ridiculous. Bureaucracy clogs its corridors. Lines of demons wait for paperwork that will never be processed. Contracts fly like confetti, each one binding souls in ways both cruel and comical. This is why Hunson feels so singular among the cosmic rulers. His dominion makes us laugh, but the laughter carries unease because beneath the humor lies a reminder of systems that crush without mercy. This is also why Finn and Jake's brief trips into the Nightosphere feel so disorienting. They are adventurers used to dungeons and monsters, but the Nightosphere is not a dungeon to be conquered. It is a system, and systems cannot be slain with sword. Every corridor they walk seems to loop endlessly. Every monster they fight is replaced by 10 more. There is no winning here, only surviving. This is Hunson's politics at work. He does not need to hunt intruders himself. His realm swallows them in rules and nonsense, in chaos given the shape of law. When we compare Hunson's politics to Princess Bubblegum, the contrast sharpens even more. Bubblegum's authority is born from her intelligence and her relentless control. She builds, she plans, she commands. Her kingdom runs because she wills it to. Hunson, by contrast, does not plan. He does not build. His authority exists because it must. He is not a ruler who maintains order through action. He is order itself, embedded in the fabric of the Nightosphere. Where Bubblegum's subjects obey her, Hunson's realm obeys him. This distinction also sets him apart from Death. Death does not rule in the way Hunson does. He presides, waiting at the edge of mortality, a silent presence whose authority is unchallenged because it is inevitable. Hunson, though, brings inevitability into action. His contracts make choices binding. his soul-devouring enforces consequence. He does not simply wait for the end. He makes sure that every decision carries weight on the way there. In this sense, Hunson is not simply the Lord of Evil. He is the cosmic reminder that nothing comes without cost. His ties to Prismo are subtler, but no less meaningful. Prismo grants wishes, bending reality to offer joy, relief, or fulfillment. Yet every wish has a cost. Every bending of reality weakens him, threatens his fragile existence. Hunson mirrors this pattern. He too offers bargains, tempting gifts wrapped in contract. And like Prismo, those bargains carry consequences that cannot be undone. The difference is tone. Prismo is kind, gentle, often playful in ways that comfort. Hunson is mocking, absurd, playful in ways that unsettle. Together they show two sides of the same coin, the possibility of choice and the inevitability of consequence. Orgalorg, meanwhile, represents hunger unchecked, the drive to dominate worlds and swallow all life. Hunson is not so different, though his hunger is focused on souls rather than planets. Both embody appetites that cannot be sated, appetites that warp everything around them. Yet where Orgalorg is cast down for its ambitions, Hunson is tolerated, even woven to the balance of things. This difference reminds us that the universe of Adventure Time does not reject all forms of hunger. Some it condemns, others it codifies, wrapping them in contracts and signatures, making them part of the fabric of existence. Hunson survives because his appetite is not rebellion, it is function. All of this shows that Hunson's politics extend far beyond the Nightosphere itself. His role is to embody temptation, bureaucracy, and consequence, not just for demons and monsters, but for anyone who dares to cross his path. He does not meddle in the politics of ooh in the way Bubblegum or Flame King do, but his presence, when it seeps across dimensions, always carries the same reminder. Choices matter, bargains bind, and rules, even absurd ones, cannot be ignored. In bedtime terms, Hunson is the voice that whispers at the edge of a dream, reminding you that every action will echo, every desire will cost, every laugh may hide a trap. His politics are not about conquest, they are about permanence. And permanence, in a world as fragile and fleeting as ooh, is perhaps the scariest thing of all. What makes the Nightosphere so haunting is how ordinary it feels beneath the chaos. Finn and Jake see screaming monsters and impossible landscapes, yet what unsettles them most are the rules. Endless lines of demons shuffling forward, forms being stamped, voices demanding signature. It is not simply terror. It is the weight of a system that continues with or without you. In that way, the Nightosphere is not so different from the world outside it. Bureaucracy, after all, is one of the most recognizable human inventions, and in Hunson's realm it is amplified into eternity. This is his politics, inevitability dressed as procedure, chaos made binding through law. Hunson himself seems to enjoy this absurdity. He leans into the humor of it, joking, laughing, never seeming to take the suffering seriously. And yet behind the smile, the system holds. Souls are devoured. Contracts cannot be broken. Rules remain unyielding. This blending of comedy and cruelty is the essence of Hunson's dominion. The Nightosphere is frightening not because it is wild, but because it is structured in a way that makes escape impossible. The monsters scream forever, but they scream in line. In the larger cosmology of Adventure Time, this positions Hunson as a figure of balance. He does not seek to overthrow other realms. He does not battle death for dominion, nor challenge Prismo's dream, nor hunt as Orgalorg once did. Instead, he embodies a specific role, consequence through contract, temptation through bureaucracy. The universe seems to allow him because his presence fills a necessary function. Just as life needs death, choice needs Hunson. He ensures that bargains are binding, that shortcuts cost more than they promise, that the structure of consequence remains intact. This necessity also explains why Hunson cannot be defeated in the traditional sense. To slay him would not only destroy a villain, it would unravel a principle. Without him, the Nightosphere would lose its shape. Its chaos would collapse or spill unchecked into other realms. Hunson's existence is what makes the Nightosphere coherent. His politics are not about personal ambition. They are about being the face of a law that the universe itself requires. It is for this reason that Hunson feels both small and vast. On one hand, he is petty, stealing fries, laughing at grievance, fumbling through fatherhood. On the other, he is cosmic, binding souls, ruling dimension, embodying inevitability. This duality is what makes him so unique among Adventure Time's cast of rulers. He is not the most terrifying nor the most powerful, but he is the one who feels most familiar because his dominion mirrors the systems and rules we recognize in our own lives. Hunson is frightening because he is not far away. He is the absurdity of authority made literal, the joke that binds with invisible string. When we compare him again to Princess Bubblegum, the parallels sharpen. Both use structure as their tool of governance. Bubblegum builds candy science, enforces laws, and maintains her kingdom with control. Hunson writes contracts, enforces bargains, and maintains his realm with inevitability. One rules through creation, the other through corruption. And yet both are reflections of how systems shape life. It is telling that Marceline, caught between these two rulers in her relationships, often finds herself rebelling against both. She understands what it means to live under the weight of structure, whether sweet or sinister. Hunson's ties to Death and Prismo further highlight his role in the cosmic balance. Death ensures that life ends. Prismo ensures that wishes cost. Hunson ensures that choices bind. Together, they form a triad of inevitability. None of them are fully malicious. None of them are fully kind. They simply exist, shaping the universe through the principles they embody. Hunson's politics, then, are not politics at all in the way we usually think of them. They are function. He is not a king who rules because he chose to. He is a ruler because the Nightosphere requires him to be. And yet Hunson never seems burdened by this role. He embraces it with humor, even joy. Unlike Death, who wears his solemn duty like a cloak, Hunson plays his role as if it were a performance. He delights in the absurdity, takes pride in the spectacle, and carries out his obligations with laughter. This is perhaps his greatest power, the ability to make inevitability look like entertainment. His laughter hides the chains hold all the same. As sleepyheads, listening tonight, we can see the lesson shimmering beneath the surface. The Nightosphere is not just a fantasy. It is a reflection of how rules and systems can trap us, how choices linger longer than we expect, how even humor can mask weight. Hunson's politics remind us that evil is not always loud or violent. Sometimes it is quiet, absurd, procedural. Sometimes it comes in the form of a contract you barely read, a promise you did not mean, a laugh that binds more tightly than anger ever could. So as we leave the Nightosphere behind for now, we carry with us the image of Hunson at its center, smiling, stamping papers, devouring souls as casually as snacks, reminding us that consequence is eternal. He is not only a ruler of monsters, but a participant in the cosmic balance, standing alongside Death, Prismo, and Orgalorg as one of the pillars that give Ooh its strange shape. His dominion is not conquest, but permanent, and permanence in a universe so fragile is the greatest power of all. In the next chapter of our tale, we will step back from realms and politics to look at the meaning of Hunson's legacy. Beyond his powers, beyond his role as a father, beyond his politics, what does Hunson symbolize? How does his shadow fall across Marceline, across the very story of Adventure Time? In the final segment, we drift into legacy, symbolism, and aftermath, closing the history of Hunson Abadeer with quiet reflection. Hunson Abadeer's legacy is not written in victories nor in empires. He does not stand as the conqueror of kingdoms or the destroyer of worlds. Instead, his legacy is quieter, stranger, and far more enduring. It lives in symbols, in echoes, in the shadows he leaves across those who encounter him. For Marceline, he is the father who defined her music. For Finn and Jake, he is the present that taught them humility. For Ooh as a whole, he is the reminder that every choice has weight, every bargain binds, and every laugh may carry consequence. When we step back and look at Hunson's place in Adventure Time, it becomes clear that his role was never to dominate the narrative, but to add texture to it. He appears only occasionally, and yet his shadow stretches wide. Through him, the show explores themes of family, consequence, bureaucracy, and the absurdity of evil. He is proof that a character need not be constant to be unforgettable. His presence lingers not because he overwhelms the story, but because he shapes it in subtle, resonant ways. One of the most important legacies Hunson leaves behind is Marceline herself. She is, in many ways, the counterpoint to his philosophy. Where Hunson represents binding rules and inevitability, Marceline represents freedom and expression. Her songs, her wandering, her refusal to be defined by one place or one role, all of these stand in quiet defiance of the father who once cast a shadow over her childhood. And yet, even in defiance, she carries him. Every lyric about longing, every melody about loss, is infused with his absence. Hunson's failure becomes Marceline's strength, shaping her into one of the most layered and beloved figures in the series. This duality is central to Adventure Time's treatment of family. Parents do not simply pass down love. They pass down wounds, expectations, absence. Hunson embodies this truth in a way few characters do. His neglect gives Marceline sorrow, but it also gives her a voice. His failures push her away, but they also make her fiercely independent. His laughter at her grievances becomes the fuel for her music. In this way, Hunson's legacy is paradoxical. He is remembered not only for what he did, but for what he failed to do. And sometimes, failure leaves the deepest mark of all. Symbolically, Hunson also serves as a reflection of systems we all recognize. His contracts, his bureaucracy, his humor-tinged cruelty. These are not simply fantasy tropes. They are mirrors of how power works in the real world. Authority is often absurd, often cruel, often dressed in humor that hides its weight. By framing Hunson's evil as paperwork and contracts, Adventure Time points to the way systems themselves can become monstrous. In this sense, Hunson is not just a character, but a metaphor for the kind of evil that hides in plain sight, dressed in rules and laughter. Yet Hunson's symbolism goes deeper still. He is not only a reminder of systemic authority, he is also a reminder of inevitability itself. Just as death waits at the end, Hunson waits in the choices we make along the way. He is the whisperer that tells us every shortcut has a cost, every bargain leaves a scar. His presence in the story makes the adventures of Ooh feel weightier, reminding us that joy and freedom are precious precisely because they exist against a backdrop of consequence. For Finn and Jake, this symbolism crystallizes in their encounters. They cannot defeat Hunson, but they can learn from it. They learn that friendship can resist even cosmic absurdity. They learn that heroism is not about eliminating shadow, but about refusing to let it break bonds of love. In this way, Hunson becomes a kind of accidental teacher. His laughter may mock, but in the end, it strengthens the resolve of those who resist him. That is part of his legacy, too. Not only what he embodies, but what he inspires in others. Hunson's legacy also lingers in how he reframes the very idea of evil within Adventure Time. The show is filled with villains, yet most of them fit familiar roles. The Lich embodies annihilation. Orgalorg embodies hunger. The Flame King embodies tyranny. Hunson, by contrast, reveals that evil does not need to be grand or apocalyptic to be effective. It can be ridiculous. It can be procedural. It can laugh while stamping paper and still bind you tighter than chains ever could. In this way, Hunson stands apart as a villain who feels oddly realistic. He is not a cosmic warlord alone. He is also the bureaucrat who shrugs at suffering because the rules say so. That duality is part of what makes him unforgettable. In Marceline's story, Hunson's symbolic role becomes even more profound. Her songs are not just expressions of loneliness. They are quiet rebellions against inevitability. Where her father devours and binds, she creates and releases. Each lyric is a refusal to let contracts define her. Each melody a counterweight to his laughter. In this way, Marceline transforms Hunson's legacy into something new. His shadow becomes the soil in which her music grows. His absence the space where her independence flourishes. Hunson may not have given her the love she needed, But by failing her, he gave her the chance to build her own voice. This interplay of failure and growth reveals one of Adventure Time's deeper truths, that pain can shape identity just as much as joy. Hunson is a wound in Marceline's past, but he is also the reason she sings. He is the reason she guards her heart so fiercely, and the reason she cherishes the friends who stand by her. Without him, she would not be the same character. In this paradox, Hunson becomes a strange kind of architect, building not by present, but by absence. Hunson's symbolism also touches Finn and Jake, though in subtler ways. For Finn, Hunson represents a boundary he cannot cross. He is the reminder that some problems cannot be solved with a sword or a heroic cry. This lesson stays with Finn, tempering his youthful bravado with humility. It teaches him that part of being a hero is knowing your limits, knowing that not every fight can be won. Hunson's legacy for Finn, then, is not trauma, but perspective, a quiet shaping of his worldview that makes him wiser with each encounter. Jake, meanwhile, learns something different. His humor, his stretching powers, his tendency to make light of danger, all of these falter before Hunson. Yet instead of breaking him, this failure teaches Jake that not every enemy needs to be outwitted. Sometimes the only victory is endurance. Sometimes the only lesson is survival. Hunson shows Jake that even laughter has limits, and in that realization, Jake gains respect for the gravity of the world around him. Taken together, these threads reveal Hunson's greater legacy. He is not simply a villain to be defeated. He is a force that shapes others, often unintentionally. Marceline becomes stronger because of it. Finn becomes wiser. Jake becomes humbler. Even U itself, when brushed by the shadow of the Nightosphere, learns the importance of boundaries and consequence. Hunson's role is not to be vanquished, but to remain, to linger like a reminder carved into the air. This lingering quality is what makes his aftermath feel so quiet. Unlike the Lich who must be locked away, or Orgalorg who must be cast down, Hunson simply retreats. He fades back into the Nightosphere, laughing as though nothing has changed. But everything has changed. His shadow remains on Marceline's songs, on Finn's heart, on Jake's laughter. His legacy is not measured in destruction, but in the way others carry him forward. He is absence made eternal, consequence given a smile. Hunson's symbolic place in Adventure Time is also illuminated by how rarely he appears. He is not present in every season, nor is he a constant antagonist lurking in the background. Instead, he arrives like a storm, sudden, disruptive, impossible to ignore, and then gone again, leaving behind only the echoes of what he stirred. This scarcity gives his appearances more weight. Each time Hunson emerges, the story shifts tone. The humor grows sharper, the shadows grow longer, and the themes of consequent family rise to the surface. He does not need to linger to be remembered. His legacy is sharpened by absence. In this way, Hunson mirrors the nature of real-world authority who dominate memory more than presence. A parent who was absent for most of childhood, yet whose influence remains. A bureaucrat who stamped one piece of paper that altered the course of a life. A figure whose decisions ripple outward long after they have gone. Hunson embodies this dynamic. His legacy is not in what he continuously does, but in the way his rare actions reverberate. This symbolic role also connects him to the broader mythology of U. Just as the Lich represents death without renewal, and Orgalor represents hunger without end, Hunson represents consequence without compassion. The Nightosphere is his body, bureaucracy his weapon, laughter his mask. In this constellation of cosmic forces, Hunson is the one who reminds us that choice is never free, that every act carries invisible chain. He is not the loudest or the most terrifying of these forces, but he is the most familiar. We recognize him in our own lives, in rules that bind, in systems that shrug, in fathers who smile while failing to care. This familiarity gives Hunson's symbolism its power. He is a fantasy, but he carries the weight of reality. When Marceline sings about stolen fries, we laugh, but we also feel the ache of neglect. When Finn struggles against Hunson's contracts, we smile at the absurdity. But we also recognize the helplessness of fighting systems larger than ourselves. Hunson's legacy is to show us that evil is not always distant or dramatic. Sometimes it is close, casual, even funny, and that is what makes it so dangerous. Yet Adventure Time never paints Hunson as entirely monstrous. That, too, is part of his legacy. In moments, he is silly, almost charming, fumbling through interactions with his daughter, making jokes that reveal his clumsiness as much as his cruelty. This complexity prevents him from being a flat symbol. He is not only consequence, he is also a father, a performer, a bureaucrat, a trickster. His legacy is not simple, because real legacy rarely is. It is messy, tangled, contradictory. Hunson represents that messiness, the way someone can be both neglectful and important, cruel and beloved, feared and laughed at. For Marceline, this contradiction becomes the core of her identity. She cannot erase her father, nor can she fully embrace him. Instead, she lives with the paradox, weaving it into her songs, her friendships, her worldview. In this way, Hunson's legacy is not something she inherits passively. It is something she reshapes. His absence becomes her art. His laughter becomes her defiance. His shadow becomes the stage where she shines brighter. Hunson may be remembered as the Lord of Evil, but Marceline ensures he is also remembered as the flawed father of the Vampire Queen. For Finn and Jake, Hunson's legacy is subtler, but still real. He is the reminder that some enemies cannot be beaten, only endured. He is the lesson that heroes must sometimes accept limits. This lesson does not define their identities in the same way it defines Marceline's, but it shapes their growth. Hunson becomes part of the patchwork of experiences that turn Finn from a boy into a hero who understands the world's complexity. His legacy is not a wound for Finn, but a whisper, a reminder tucked into the back of his mind whenever he faces something too big to conquer. Hunson's aftermath is not destruction or conquest. It is resonant. He leaves behind songs, memories, lessons, and symbols. He fades into the Nightosphere, but his shadow remains in the characters who carry him. That is the quiet truth of his story. He is remembered less for what he achieved and more for what others made of him. Marceline's music, Finn's humility, Jake's humor tempered by respect. All of these are part of Hunson's legacy, even if he never intended them to be. Hunson's legacy can also be felt in the way Adventure Time handles closure, or rather, the lack of it. With many characters, arcs are resolved, battles are won, and stories are neatly tied together. But with Hunson, the threads are left loose. He is never redeemed in a dramatic transformation. He never apologizes in a way that erases Marceline's pain. He never abandons his role as ruler of the Nightosphere. Instead, he remains exactly what he is, flawed, consistent, and incomplete. And in that incompleteness, he feels real. Many relationships in life never find resolution, and Hunson reflects that quiet truth. This lack of resolution is not emptiness, it is meaning. Adventure Time often reminds us that stories do not always end with triumph. Sometimes they end with reflection, with learning to carry the weight of what cannot be changed. Hunson embodies that lesson. Marceline learns not to wait for her father to change, but to find strength in her own voice. Finn learns not to try to fix what is not his to mend, but to support his friends through their struggle. Jake learns that even laughter has limit, and that respect for shadow is as important as defiance. Hunson's presence gives these lessons shape and then vanish, leaving the characters to carry them forward. Symbolically, Hunson also leaves us with an image of evil that is not overwhelming, but persistent. He is not the cataclysmic end of the world. He is the ongoing weight of consequence, the lingering presence of neglect, the absurd systems that continue whether we resist them or not. This quieter form of evil is perhaps more frightening than any apocalypse, because it does not end. It persists, smiling, laughing, stamping contrast, while life continues around it. Hunson reminds us that not all battles are loud. Some are quiet, stretched across lifetime. And yet, in the midst of that shadow, there is light. Marceline's songs shine brighter because of the darkness she endured. Finn and Jake's heroism feels deeper because it was tested against forces they could not defeat. Even Hunson's laughter, cruel as it may be, becomes a mirror in which others define their own strength. His legacy, then, is not destruction, but transformation. Those around him grow, even if he does not. His aftermath is not ruin, but resilience. As we drift further into this reflection, Hunson Abadeer becomes less a character and more a symbol. He is the shadow that teaches us to value light, the neglect that teaches us to value love, the absurd authority that teaches us to value freedom. His story is not about victory, but about reminder, and that reminder lingers long after his figure fades back into the Nightosphere. For sleepyheads listening tonight, there is comfort. Hunson shows us that shadows cannot always be erased, but they can be lived with, transformed, even reshaped. The quiet strength of Marceline's voice, the courage of Finn, the humor of Jake, these are lights that exist because of the shadow he cast. In this way, Hunson's legacy is not only about what he failed to give, it is also about what others created in response. His laughter may echo, but so does Marceline's song, and the song endures longer. And so we close the story of Hunson Abadeer, the Lord of Evil, the bureaucrat of souls, the flawed father, the cosmic reminder of consequence. His history is written not in triumph, but in symbols, not in kingdoms conquered, but in the hearts of those who live with him and beyond him. He is both terrifying and laughable, cruel and clumsy, absent and unforgettable. His shadow stretches across adventure time, not to overwhelm it, but to give depth to its light. As the Nightosphere settles back into quiet screams, as Ooh carries on with its bright adventures, Hunson remains unchanged, eternal, a smile in the dark. And those who knew him, Marceline, Finn, Jake, carry forward stronger, wiser, more tender because of him. That is his legacy. That is the quiet aftermath of the Lord of Evil. Good night.